Hi guys, and welcome to the Unquendor Guitars workshop. My name is Daniel and this is another part in the video series where I'm building my Phoenix guitar, a tribute to a Gibson Firebird. In the previous episode I started working on these two fretboards, and this episode will be a straight continuation of that video. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. So guys, it's the next day and here's our experiment, and as you can see the tray is no longer in this vacuum bag, and that's because off camera I realized I might need some other pieces of flamed maple during this build stained orange, so I added two other pieces, two thin offcuts I had laying around, and while I was adding these into the bag things got really messy, so I decided to lose the tray and just use the bag. And it seems it might have worked, so I'm going to release the vacuum. Come on. Like so. Open the bag and hopefully it won't be as messy as putting it in, because there's still orange stains everywhere. I'm a bit annoyed by that. But I have my tray right here. Wow, they're really orange. Cool. Wow, it looks stunning. Look at that, guys. And this is what I meant with a great orange color. It's not too, it's bright, but it's not obnoxiously bright. It's not as yellow, I think, might be the correct description. Look at those flames. I think it shows up on camera. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how they look so far, and now let's hope the stain has penetrated into the fibers all the way through. Yeah, these pieces look absolutely stunning, and yeah, I think because I had some weight on top of the bag while these pieces were soaking, they haven't warped or twisted yet, and although they are very thin pieces, but now comes the tricky part, drying these pieces, and that's when I expect most of the warping to occur, and I can already see it kind of happening. So I think the best way is to stack these up, because it's a beautiful day out. So I'm going to first stack them and let them dry. I'm going to use some icicle sticks to raise them off this board just a little. like so. Oh. And same goes for the other two pieces. And I'm using these sticks just to raise them off the board just a little, so there can also be some airflow underneath. Everything is nicely stacked, and I'm going to put these aside for a day, couple of days. I'll see, and when I think the drying isn't fast enough, I can put these in my oven. I have a very big oven in my kitchen, and set the oven to a very low heat and with air circulation, and that should dry them out in a couple of hours. But for now, I'm going to try to air dry them here in the shed. I'm going to put them aside, and we'll continue with the fretboards. So while we wait for the orange strips to dry, of course, we're going to work some more on the actual fretboards themselves. And one thing I haven't addressed yet is the second part of the binding, that are the offcuts from the fretboards themselves. So here I have these four sides of the fretboards, and the only thing that I'm going to do to these strips is plane down the edge that was cut, so the cutting surface. And the only thing I'm going to do is make this as flat as possible, so I have a nice gluing surface, so I can later on stick an orange strip to the side of the fretboard and then stick the side back in place, so I get the orange stripe on the edge of the fretboard I'm looking for, with an offset of about 2 mils. So luckily I have a vise that should hold these little strips, and I have to make sure I'm going to plane with the grain. So it should be clamped on something like this. Barely, but it works. No, I haven't. And then with my plane again, I'm starting to repeat myself on a shallow setting. First knock off the obvious high spots. And as soon as you have a full continuous shaving, you're done. Nice smooth edge. Let's do them all. And if the strip you're trying to plane, or you need to plane, is just too thin to stick in a vise or use a shooting board, you can always stick it to another piece of wood, an offcut you have laying around, with some double-sided tape. Or masking tape and super glue, but I prefer for this, I usually prefer double-sided tape. Just a couple pieces. Like so, for instance. So you can stick down the little strip, and to not exceed any force, I'm going to use a smaller plane. And make sure you have the tip of the strip you're trying to plane flush with the support, because otherwise your plane will hit the support and will create a ramp. Again, first take off the obvious high spots. Yeah guys, I might make this look easy, but it does require some patience and some skill with your playing to keep it nice and square to that little strip and get it nice and straight and flat. It requires, like I said, some finesse with a blade. But if you manage it, it's the best way, and you can get these nice, very long curls of these thin shavings. And yeah, it's disintegrating in my hands, but yeah, it isn't as easy as it looks. And if you're experiencing troubles with your plane, you could always use a leveling beam and some 240, 120, 240 grit sandpaper, and use your leveling beam to get these strips nice, flat and square. I, however, like to use my plane. Makes the process a tiny bit more quicker. And to check my progress, I can take the actual fretboard with a nice and straight side. Not quite there yet. This is very acceptable. I'm happy with it. So I now have to determine what to do next. If I'm going to wait for the orange strips to dry, stick the orange strips in place and then cut the fret slots, or if I can cut the frets, or if I should cut the fret slots first. I think it would be better to first cut the fret slot, because then I have the final size lengthwise of the fretboard, and then I can cut off a tiny section from the end of the fretboard and have the orange stripe go across and back, so it's a U shape, and I can make nice miter joints at the ends of the orange strip. So yeah, let's prepare myself to cut some fret slots. Yeah, and of course to cut my fret slots I'm using my little Proton table saw again. And if you haven't seen a video, I'm not going to explain it in detail. I have a video on this fret slotting jig. It's called Never Cut Fret Slots by Hand Again, and I'll leave a card somewhere in this corner. It's just a router sled with an indexing pin and a very tiny saw blade with only 0.5 millimeter curve. That should be perfect for the tang for the frets I'm using. And it should fit the other way around, of course. Here we go. And I'm using one of these templates from TLC Guitar Goods, and they just slot in place. And I can cut my fret slots with it. But first, of course, I have to stick the fretboard nice and centered on this template. Usually I'm not as concerned about centering the fretboard exactly to the template, but in this case, because it's already tapered, I need to be very precise. I'm going to put you to the side for a moment. Yeah, I think I'm going to use this massive masking tape. The only thing is I need to know where the center line is. So this is approximately where the end of the fretboard is going to be. And I've indicated where my nut line should be on the template. So back of the fretboard, and the first fretboard I'm going to cut is the Obsidian Ebony. So hopefully that doesn't ruin my saw blade, but I don't think so. The blade I'm using is suitable to cut hard plastics, so it should have no trouble with this stuff. I've already indicated my nut line on the fretboard. I'm just going to remove a bit of tape so I can see the lines. Remove some tape here. And if there ever was a critical part of your build, this might be it. To make sure your fret slots end up nice and well, using the template they should be parallel, but nice and perpendicular to your center line. It would keep you from all kinds of intonation problems if you do this correctly. Again, some slower drying thick CA glue, so I have a bit of time to place the fretboard perfectly onto the template. slowly stick it in place and keep checking. And if you're in doubt, you've just spent 10 cents, 20 cents on, I think not even 20 cents, on masking tape and super glue. So if you're not certain you've stuck your fretboard on your template correctly, just rip it off and do it again until you're as sure as you can be that you've stuck it on correct. So yeah, always double check, and I'm going to double check this. Where is it going to? I made a mistake. When I made the mark off camera on the template where the nut line should be, I had my template the wrong way around. So I have to do this again. Like I said, it's better that you have to do this again than messing up your 30-40 bucks fretboard. Because a piece of ebony these days is way more expensive than a couple of minutes of your time and some masking tape and super glue. And I also think I'm not going to use the very white masking tape because it was already a bit hard to remove. It stuck to the fretboard a bit too good, and I might have troubles removing it later on. So yeah, smaller masking tape. Where's my knife? Here's my knife. So, some super glue. Yeah, should be enough. Center line right here, nut line. Take the correct one this time. Oh. I forgot to draw the center line across the face of the fretboard apparently, or at least I can't see it anymore. So there it is. Next attempt. Center line right here. Nut line right there. Center line right here. I'm going to be ultra precise with this placement. All right, What I'm doing right now is use my protractor that has the measurements coming from the center to check if the fretboard is sticking out equally on either side of the center line. So just to check once more my own center line. Yeah, I'm going to let this rest for a minute, I think, so I can be absolutely sure the fretboard is securely stuck to the template, and then I'm going to use this jig to cut the actual fret slots. So guys, here's my little jig, my Proton table saw. And it's fitted with this very tiny blade. And again, watch the video on how to never cut fret slots by hand again. I made sure it's absolutely square to the table. And I have my little cross-cut slat. And the blade is sticking out approximately 3 millimeters above the surface of my slat. There's an indexing pin, and here is my template and these slots index on that pin. And if I keep my template through this piece of wood, I can run my fretboard over the saw and it should cut a nice fret slot. I hope this shows up on camera. This is where my nut line is going to be. So let's make the first cut and see if we've set up everything properly. Make sure everything is locked in place. Yeah, everything is locked. So here we go. All right. Let's go. And as you can see, I'm dead on my mark. So this is the nut line. In the future, here is where the nut is going to sit. So now I can cut the rest of the fret slots. One more check. It's a bit too late, but I could always move the fretboard ever so slightly if I would be much out of whack, but yeah. It's dead straight, dead perpendicular to the center line, so we did a good job. So let's cut the fret slots. We missed one. Which one did we miss? This one. Let's cut it. Yeah. And this is how easy it is. I can't think of any faster way of cutting fret slots. Even a CNC machine isn't this fast. If you set up this jig, of course the bonus of a CNC machine is that it can route everything at the same in one go. But yeah, if it comes to cutting fret slots, I think nothing beats this machine. It's so fast. And if you made your jig well enough, it's also very accurate. So off camera I counted and marked all the frets just to be sure, and of course, and this is the 24th fret, and the last slot is the end of the fretboard. Now I have to make another cut, some 3 millimeters from the end, and that's where the orange strip is going to sit when everything is done. So luckily I made this jig that I can remove the indexing strip. And with the indexing pin removed, I can measure 3 millimeters back. So this is where it was. 3 mils, so offset, 3 mils offset. This is where this is going to be. Yeah. So I can make another cut. It's a bit scary, but I'm pretty sure I've done this all right. So yeah, this is where I'm going to cut the fretboard right now, and this is where I later on will stick the orange stripe to, and then we can glue this section back in place. I'm very glad that worked out. Now let's do the ebony fretboard as well. Yeah, once again I'm pretty pleased with how that went. Again, first time for me. Let's put the indexing pin back in place. Like so. And let's do the ebony fretboard in exactly the same way. It might be a good idea to always make 2 fretboards. If you mess up one, you always have a spare. Here we go, remove the masking tape. And let's prepare the ebony fretboard. And on a side note, yeah, cutting the Obsidian Ebony was very easy. I didn't notice anything when using this setup. The blade cut it very well, there was no difference. I could notice about cutting this than just regular untreated wood. So yeah, I'm going to put this one aside with the appropriate side stripes. No, that's not this one. And to be honest with you guys, speaking about it, now that I'm working especially with the thinner strips, I can hardly see the difference anymore between the Obsidian Ebony, so the treated maple, and regular ebony. Yeah, I think it's a good substitute for real ebony. There is one downside, however, and that's the smell. My entire shop smells like chemicals. There's a faint hint of a chemical smell coming from not only the fretboard, and hopefully it gases off, because I wouldn't want my guitar, when it comes out of the case, that it would smell like this. It's a pungent, is that the correct term? It's a chemical smell. You can smell it in everything, even my dust collector, the air coming from my dust collector, because the dust and chips and such are in the big bag in my dust collector. You can smell it in the air coming through the filter. You can smell, just a plasticky chemical smell is in the workshop, and that is a downside for me. And yeah, I have to see once the fretboard is out in the open for a couple of days longer, and that hopefully the smell subsides. But yeah, for now, one of the downsides for me would be not working with the material, because it's great. One of the downsides for me would be the smell. Yeah, let's prepare the ebony fretboard. First clean up a bit, because I'm not sure where everything is, and I don't like that. I'm going to need you. I don't need you. I'll put you aside for now. So let's do the next fretboard. First, some masking tape on the template. Masking tape. Fretboard. A little bit more light, tiny bit. Yep. It's a downside of getting a bit older. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. Okay. Check, double check. Yep. Glue. And let it Yeah, I can really advise using slow setting super glue instead of the fast setting, so you have some time to adjust your fretboard to be perfectly centered on your template. Of course, check if everything aligns properly as it should. So this is the notch for the nut line. Yeah, and it seems to be fine, so let's cut the first slot. Yeah, nice and close to the edge. Let's cut the rest of the fret slots. Nice, quick and easy. Very consistent fret slots. Of course, I need to cut the tiny little section for the orange stripe. And let's see, how did I do that? Yeah, I have to remove this. And without the dust extractor, this is all the noise the machine makes. Very quiet. And here's the little cut for the orange stripe. After cutting the fret slots, I can remove the template from the fretboard or the fretboard from the template using a putty knife. I don't know. In the last episode I kept calling it a palette knife, and now I'm not sure what this thing is called. Is it a palette knife or a putty knife or maybe something else entirely? I don't know. Remove the masking tape. Bye-bye template. And the first thing I'm going to do is remove the ends from these two fretboards with a Japanese saw. They're just a perfect tool for jobs like this. My vise. So I wanted to put the fretboard in my vise, but this is a very good vise and it won't adjust to the taper. It stays nice and parallel with the rest of the workbench. So I have to come up with another solution. Okay, very easy. Just use a clamp and clamp the fretboard to the workbench. Well, come on. One day I might order those clamps that fit in the bench dog holes. And of course my Japanese saw, and very carefully cut off the end. Like so, and also do the other end. Come on. And I leave this tiny bit on, I think, for now, so I won't lose it until I'm going to work at the orange strips. Wow, 2 fretboards complete with fret slots, and they're exactly the same. I can check this by putting them on top of each other, one fret slots up, the other fret slots down, and if the taper is exact and the fret slots are matching on both sides, I know they're identical and they're mirrored and the taper is perfect on both. Otherwise it will show if on one the fret slots weren't exactly perpendicular to the center line. It would show if you put them on top of each other like this, and then on one side the fret slots shouldn't match up, but they do. So they're perfect. The end line is in, so now it's time to check whether or not our orange experiment worked out. Here they are, bright orange strips, and I must say they only have air dried. Some have a tiny bit of warping going on, but for this thin of material and having been that soaked with stain, they hardly moved. Some didn't do anything at all, maybe just at the end for 2 of them, but this one, for example, is perfectly straight still, and they only have been air drying. So same goes for these 2 little plates. There's a bit of warping going on, but nothing too major. I'm pretty pleased how this turned out, but now the big question, and I think I already know the answer. Did the stain penetrate all the way through? So let's grab something to cut on. Let's grab ourselves a sample and a big chisel and snap a piece of one of these little strips and see if they've stained all the way through. So let's check it. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but the stain hasn't penetrated all the way through and through. I can still see the maple on the inside. So this experiment didn't work out. I can also test one of these pieces I meant to use partially for inlays. But taking this corner off, you can clearly see this one, still maple on the inside. So guys, unfortunately the experiment didn't work out the way I hoped it would. It was a bit of wishful thinking, to be honest, to begin with, that drenching the maple in stain and putting it in a vacuum bag would stain it all the way through. It was a bit wishful thinking, but well, at least I tried, and now I know that this method doesn't work. Maybe it's the maple or maybe it's my method. I'm not sure. If you guys have any idea how to fully color a strip of maple like this, let me know in the comment section down below. I have a guitar to build and I don't have much time to experiment any further, so I have to come up with a different solution. So yeah, these strips are still nice and orange, so maybe I can use them on another project, but for this purpose they're not suitable, and that's because, for anyone wondering, I need the maple to be stained all the way through, and that's because when I'm going to use it as binding I need to scrape or sand off the top. And most likely when the maple is glued to the fretboard, the glue will penetrate to some extent into the maple and will cover it over top, and then I can't stain it afterwards. The chances of portions of the binding are unstainable after gluing it in or onto the fretboard are very likely, so that's why I need an orange binding strip to begin with. And same goes with the inlay. If I use this as an inlay and I have to sand it flush with the fretboard, it will be maple colored again, and due to the glue used for the inlay there are chances I can't stain it, certainly not around the edges. So yeah, hopefully I can use this on other projects, and otherwise it only has costed me $1 for the vacuum bag, some scrap pieces of maple, and a couple of minutes of my time. So I'm going to put these aside, maybe for another project, or maybe I experiment on these later. For example, letting them soak in stain for maybe a couple of weeks and see what the result is by then. But for now I have a guitar to build, so put them aside, and I'm going to think about a different solution to make the orange stripes on these fretboards. And that's unfortunately all I have time for in this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, of course, leave a like. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, let me know in the comment section down below. It really helps other viewers, other YouTube viewers, to find my content, which in the long run supports me and my channel. If you'd like to support me more directly, consider getting yourself a nice Unquendor Guitars t-shirt by visiting the Unquendor merchandise shop underneath this video. I really appreciate all the support you guys can give me. If you're new to my channel and you happen to like what you've seen, please consider subscribing and hit that little notification bell and set it to notify all, so YouTube will notify you when I upload something new and you don't have to miss out on anything. Yeah, that's it for this video. I hope to see you all in the next one, but until then, take care and bye bye.